Demitri Downing back with another episode of Mita Unshackled, Phoenix, Arizona. We like to be mobile. Next week we'll be in Chicago. That'll be very exciting. We'll have another 16 episodes, but we save our unbelievably special guests for our in-studio episodes here in Phoenix, Arizona. So I'm pleased to welcome from Surfside, Anthony Green. How you doing?
Great, Demitri. How are you?
Anthony, first, we always like to share people a little bit about you and who you are and how you got involved in the cannabis industry. Then we'll talk about Surfside. Tell us about Anthony.
Well, I grew up in Australia. That's probably pretty obvious from my accent. And I've been in the advertising, technology, e-commerce, marketing, technology space really all my career, 20 plus years. Started in Sydney, spent some time in London, spent 10 years in New York City, and I've been living out here in California now for about 8 years. I made the move into cannabis technology about 2.5 years ago. Actually started at Weed Maps. So I was over there for about 18 months and I ran their first MSO dedicated team, which was super exciting, great opportunity. Loved my time there. Really gave me a good opportunity to not just get into the space, but to get to start to understand it and learn it. I don't think that learning curve will ever end because it's a ever-changing industry and there's so much to learn and know. But over the 2+ years, I've got to know a few things, and I was very fortunate about 7 or 8 months ago to come and join Surfside. I lead the sales team over here at Surfside, and we're now the preeminent advertising technology company in the space, working with the biggest MSOs down to individual dispensaries and small brands.
That's right. I'm trying to. I always take notes over here because I'm an ex-prosecutor. A couple of things. You notice a little WM on my hat here?
That's a little Weed Maps.
This is a Weed Maps hat.
They do great merch. I mean, I never realized that's one of the funny little, I guess, nuances of cannabis. The merch is such a big deal, and I didn't know that coming in. I'd worked in so many other industries in the past, including with companies like Nike, the folks that make a lot of these leading brand merchandise. But it was a big thing at Weed Maps. They had a whole department, huge budgets around merch. And as I've spent more time in the industry, especially time in dispensaries with the folks on the ground, it's cool and fun. And there's some really great looking stuff out there. And it's a really cool little nuanced part of the industry.
Well, it must have been tough to leave Weed Maps, and they are the cool kids in the industry, but you also ended up with a great company, Surfside. So congratulations on that move. That was about 7-8 months ago.
Yeah, February this year I joined.
Oh, fantastic. So what is your experience in the cannabis industry? Because what are your impressions? What do you see like from an outsider coming in?
What a great question that is. Look, Weed Maps was very different than Surfside in that Weed Maps is maybe the best known or one of the best known brands, period, in the industry. They're an OG company. And so when you join a company like that, you immediately, by default, to sort of working with, have access to pretty much everyone in the industry from a brand and retailer perspective, as well as other tech companies. And so, they're a pretty big fish in what is relatively still, in terms of, marketing and revenue and so forth, and company valuation, a relatively small pond when you compare it to the whole economy. Joining Surfside, we are a fast growing company, but a newer company, not public like Weed Maps are. And so I've learned a lot very, very quickly. I think the biggest thing I've seen as compared to, former roles where I've sold to, big CPG companies and, companies like T-Mobile, Nike, these sorts of businesses in cannabis, is that because it's such a new, fast-growing industry, there's a lot of openness to new thinking. There's a real openness to new ideas, new ways of doing things that could be quite challenging in those more established markets. Now, that's not to say everyone's in that mindset, but I do see every single day in my role now, and I'm dealing with, again, MSOs all the way down to individual operators, a real thirst and excitement and openness to look at new ways of, in our world, advertising and marketing. Mm-hmm. There's very little hesitancy there to say, hey, that's something new, that's something exciting, let's try that and see if it works. And that's a really cool thing for us and a really cool place for us to be, because we're that sort of business as well. When you're an advertising technology company, we have engineers and folks constantly who are developing exciting new tools and technologies. That's in our DNA. And so when we find customers who also have that mindset, we're able to do really, really exciting new things. And so that's probably the biggest thing. I'd say the other secondary thing is, and you've probably seen a lot more of this than I, but there's the real sort of original folks in this industry. And then there's a ton of folks, I guess, more like myself, who have come in more recent years from other industries. And so there's an interesting juxtaposition there of folks that really know the industry, really know the plant, versus some folks who have come in who maybe have more expertise in specific areas like advertising or marketing. And so it's been very interesting to see that firsthand at Weed Maps. I experienced that with my colleagues there. And then even within my customer base and the customers we've worked with at Surfside, you can see this internally in some of these businesses. We've got some people have been there for 10 plus years or in the industry 10 plus years. And then you've got some new person coming in who's very excited by the opportunity in cannabis, but they're brand new to the space. And so seeing those two ways of thinking come together is also a big differentiator.
You know, it's a couple of things you mentioned, the ecosphere that's being created. I've been in the industry since 2012, and there's guys that have been in the industry since 1950, for a long time. The OGs, and we've mad respect for them. But the world is always changing. Everybody starts somewhere, and one of the most important things I've always found, and you were Weed Maps is like the culture over there is like king. So you were fortunate to come in with the right people because they have the right attitude and they care about the spirit of the cannabis community, the cannabis movement, the cannabis industry, the cannabis culture, the cannabis patients, which shapes how the ecosphere will eventually be developed. An ecosphere which did exist prior to 2010, 11, 12 during the big transition years, but has been turned on its head because all that OG legacy stuff, all the old ways of doing business, all the different methodologies of advertising back in 1997, and there were methodologies, maybe it was word of mouth, handshake, whatever, all those are gone. And now a whole new ecosphere is being created, and it's exciting. And what it allows for is individuals like yourself, who obviously you're an incredibly sharp dude with incredible amounts of experience, knowledge, examples of different industries, of different advertising things, of different things. Bring it in and see what fits and see what works. And just a little sharing my perspective is that I think that those ideas that reflect what is ultimately best for the patients and consumers will win and will triumph and will develop and shape the future ecosphere of the industry. That's just my little take.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, especially on the culture side and making sure that's maintained and developed. I think the other piece of that I've seen, and this is really only in my relatively brief tenure in the industry, a couple of years plus, is a shift, of course, to also making sure that folks are driving revenue and they're profitable and they're building sustainable businesses. And I only hear a lot of this stuff secondhand about the old days or the more OG days, call it the 2010s, if you like, of the industry, where there was a bit more of a laissez-faire attitude to some of this stuff. It was like, this is cannabis. We can do no wrong. This is a must, definite win. This is a gold mine, all those sorts of things. And now we're sort of in this place where, yes, the culture has to be grown, maintained, and enhanced. But at the same time, and this is where Surfside really comes in, our big focus really with our customers is understanding their business objectives, which is generally something like, grow revenue, acquire new customers, beat the competition, those standard things, and making sure that when they invest money in marketing and advertising, that we're able to show them the return they're getting on that investment. So gone are the days of throwing money at things and going,
right.
It's the old adage of 50% of my marketing budget is wasted. I just don't know what 50%. Those days are gone. I think certainly in this industry where, as we all know, and everyone on this podcast knows, that margins are getting squeezed, competition's increasing, just the cost of doing business is going through the roof. You can't put good money after bad. And so that's the other piece that we're trying to balance here, is being part of the culture, being part of the industry and supporting that, but also making sure that we're helping our customers to grow their businesses profitably.
And let's get into how you're doing that in a second. I want to talk about Surfside, what it is, where it came from, and how you can help your customers. Just a couple comments. I can see why Surfside hired you. I don't think as Mita, we could use Surfside, but certainly a lot of our members could. I want to have a beer with you and learn more about you already.
I'm good at that.
And we haven't even talked about Surfside yet. You know what I'm saying? It's like that this was a good pickup. Whoever grabbed you at Surfside, because now we should talk about Surfside.
Yes, let's talk about Surfside.
Surfside. How long has Surfside been around, and what's their evolution, and then we can get into what Surfside does.
Yeah, well, John Lowen and Michael Blanche are our co-founders and co-CEOs. Founded and launched Surfside sort of the late part of 2018. Company's growing very substantially year over year, and really launched the business to help the retailers and the brands within the industry, and also some sort of peripheral companies that support retailers and brands to really own their own customer and really understand who their customers are, and to go and acquire and transact with more people like those customers, rather than investing in third parties or being beholden to other entities. Really making sure they're investing in their own brand, their own retail footprint, their own businesses. So we do that through digital marketing. So just marketing on the internet and through apps, essentially. And we're all familiar with that. I mean, obviously we're sitting here using that technology as we speak. And so we've helped these retailers and brands to use their own data. So that's a big piece of what we do, is instead of buying these sort of third-party audiences and buying audiences that everyone else has access to, as these retailers and brands build up their own databases, and this is from folks within their CRM, folks that have transacted with them, using those folks and actually building what we call first-party audiences. So finding someone like Demitri, like yourself in Arizona, let's say you're a customer of our dispensary, we can, through Surfside's technology, understand all the attributes that are associated with you. Obviously, basic demographic and geographic attributes, but also psychographic attributes, other things you're interested in. And then we use that to go and put essentially ads in front of people that demonstrate similar characteristics to yourself. And that ad is to either make a transaction online, an e-commerce transaction for a dispensary, or to go into a dispensary and make a purchase, and not dissimilar for brands. So that's what we're here to do, is to really help retailers and brands to go and acquire new customers, but not do it on a sort of random basis, to use the data they have today internally, that's their data that they own, that has a lot of value, and turn that into more new customers who are going to come back and have a strong lifetime value.
And this activity is absolutely necessary, whether they do it themselves or they work with professionals who know how to enhance, who know how to do this. I mean, it just seems like a no-brainer. Everybody's doing it to some degree. Why not do it as well as it can be done with the experts?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, it's very few, I don't think anyone these days in any industry could get away with not marketing or advertising themselves in some way. I mean,
right.
There might be a restaurant or two in your neighborhood that's been there for a long time that everyone knows and loves. Sure, maybe they don't need to do too much.
You would be shocked. Look, I'll give you a couple of examples. I won't mention any names. There's in Arizona, for example, there's a dispensary group that has 7 to 10 dispensaries, and they spend $100,000 a month on advertising, marketing, and this kind of stuff. And they're doing $1 million to $2 million per store across their realm. There's this other dispensary that has 2 that's doing $700,000 to $800,000 per store, and they do nothing but open their door. And that's exactly what you were just saying. There does exist somebody who does nothing, and there's a few others, but then again, they haven't met you yet, and I'm going to encourage them to watch this video so they can meet you, because you're the kind of guy that I think they would probably want to have a beer with. But that people need to understand the value of this. How do you explain to people the value and the importance of working? How do you sell that to this guy who says, you know what, I can open my doors, I'm making a few $1 million a year. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I'd say, look, regardless of the state, right? You look at Arizona as a market, it's different than I live here in California. Look at what's going on in New York right now. Every single state, and this is one of the fun things about this industry and the very challenging things about this industry, is every state's different. And so regardless of the market, let's talk about Arizona. The listeners in Arizona would know this, far better than I day to day, It is very, very, very competitive. And there are MSOs investing a lot of money in those states. They're having varied degrees of success in the state. There's smaller players, as you've articulated, and everyone in between. Your competitors are coming for you, whether it's an MSO going after a smaller dispensary brand chain or vice versa, because there's only X amount of consumers out there. And yes, there's still a gray market, and there's still probably folks to bring over from that market, but there's a lot of blood in the water as it pertains to competition. And so if you're 1 in 1,000 who has such a strong customer loyalty, you have, I think I just lost you. Are you there? There we go.
I think we're okay. Are we okay?
You went, my screen went black for a second. So that was
right.
That was the hook coming out.
That was a little side visual effect. It was a challenge here. Sorry, go ahead.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a rounding error of folks that have the luxury of not making sure they're defending at least their turf, if not going after their competitors' customers as well. You've got to. I mean, the industry is continuing to expand, grow, change, evolve. At some point, probably it's going to settle into some sort of consistency. But at the moment, if you're not out there actively pursuing new customers, both net new customers and your competitors' customers, and also making sure that your loyal customer today remains loyal, then you're probably going to start to lose market share. And so that means everyone has to not only do advertising, which is what Surfside does, but you've got to invest in your CRM programs. You've got to invest in your website, your e-commerce, like there's in your PR, in your field marketing. You know, there's so many different channels, but you've got to have a strategy, and you've got to have a plan to at least defend your turf and make sure your customers stay your customers. But also, I mean, I think the investors want to see growth. You've got to go out there and find ways of acquiring new customers. And so that leaves everyone in a place where either do it yourself or bring experts in, which is probably going to drive a much better overall return.
Yeah, and certainly at the retail level, obviously, you know, everyone should take a meeting with you, you know, and so you could discuss with them your success stories. We can get into some stories and some case studies as to what you've done. But I am curious about one thing, because we touch a lot of brands. How can brands utilize your platform or work with you to enhance? And, you know, the shelf space wars are just beginning. And, you know, if I own a brand, I want to bring good ideas to the retail store, you know what I'm saying? And maybe they hadn't heard of Surfside. Maybe there's something that you could share with the brands. I don't know. You see what I'm saying?
100%. So I'd encourage everyone who's listening in that's interested in how to grow their business, how to grow their brand, to look into the concept of a retail media network. This is common vernacular in the marketing advertising world these days. The best example of this is a little company called Amazon. You go to any e-commerce website today, there'll be some element of a retail media network. And all that really means at its simplest is it allows the brands who are selling on that e-commerce site, so all the brands that sell on Amazon, Best Buy, Walmart, you name it, to advertise on that website. It's as simple as that. And so recently what we've done is in about May this year, we launched this in Massachusetts, but we're rolling it out, including in Arizona currently. We've launched the cannabis industry's version of this. We call it Surfside Commerce Media. And that's all it does. It's a concept that is 25% of all digital advertising spend, period, not just in cannabis, but in every industry. 25% of spend is going into this retail media space. Another interesting stat around this, which blew my mind when I learned it this year myself, is that Amazon make over 2/3 of their profit from their retail media network. Amazon is an enormous company, as we know, with many, many different divisions and tenants. Some of them lose money, of course, but this is their cash cow. And all it is all of those products that they sell on Amazon.com today. And we all know how competitive it is there. When you go and search for a toothbrush on Amazon,
right,
you have 2,000 options to buy. No one's scrolling to the last listing there. So brands are able to amplify their presence on Amazon and Best Buy, and now within cannabis, which I'll come to, by purchasing advertising. And so when I search for toothbrush, I might see an ad from Oral-B, right, is the first thing I see. And that allows those brands to get more exposure, get more clicks, and ultimately drive more revenue because their product is featured first. And we're all pretty lazy when we're buying online. Often we'll go for the first thing that catches our eye. That's a retail media network. Amazon pioneered it. Everyone's copied. So to answer your question around brands, we've now got at Surfside really the ultimate advertising solution for brands, where brands who are already selling on those e-commerce websites are able to buy really primary and preferential inventory to advertise their products, so that when the consumer hits that menu, that e-commerce site, and as we know, many consumers still are very uneducated. They don't really know what they're looking for. They're overwhelmed by the amount of products and brands, that brands can get front and center, top of mind by when someone hits that website, they're looking for a pre-roll. A pre-roll brand could have a banner ad or other different ad units where the consumer is able to say, oh, that looks great. That's interesting. I'm going to click on that. They go through and they're able to purchase that product. So this is the holy grail for brands in cannabis now.
Right.
Is not just all this sort of top of the funnel brand awareness advertising, which is often very hard to measure that return on investment. You can get a sense of how many people saw your ad or maybe clicked on your ad, but understanding how many people actually made a purchase has traditionally been very challenging. Now with putting advertising on the menu, on the website where that product is sold, they get all those metrics. They can understand their brand awareness, but they can now see how many people physically purchased on that menu, on that e-commerce site. So they get a true, what we call return on ad spend, which is part of a return on investment. So we brought this now to cannabis. It's super exciting. It's a big part of our business, and it solves the challenge for brands of being able to understand where are their dollars going. If they invest money in this advertising, in this marketing, do they know where it's going? 100%, they know exactly where it's going.
I'm a big fan. I know most of the C-suite over at Weed Maps. I'm going to tell them they shouldn't have let you go. They should recruit you back and pay you twice as much money. No, you're good. No, check it out. So just Googling Trulieve, Trulieve, you go Google dispensaries, Trulieve comes up first. Okay, Google hit Trulieve. They have a bunch of stores in Arizona. I hit Apache Junction. You go to vape, and then it has a list of vapes. Nowhere am I being pushed a particular one, but then on the list of vapes, it has a weird, it doesn't, it just lists them. I'm not sure if it's even alphabetically or what, but there should be a pop-up banner here. There should be an ad. I mean, is that an example of what you guys help with?
Yeah, it's exactly what you mentioned a few moments ago, Demitri, which is the in-store merchandise space battle. I think you or maybe I didn't articulate that as accurately, but essentially
the brand wars, the shelf space wars.
Brand wars. So this is just digital brand space war, right? You got walk into a dispensary. I'll walk down to my local dispensary here in Venice, and there are just a proliferation of products. It's confusing for the consumer. Same when they hit a website. You've just gone through this. You've just gone to the Trulieve site there. Same deal. And look, some people might have been smoking weed all their lives, but they didn't really have a lot of optionality, right? Like there was one or two maybe options for them. So everyone is still relatively, or not everyone, but the majority of the market are uneducated and unaware. And so there's that feeling of being overwhelmed when you walk into a dispensary, but also when you hit a menu, that you're on the Trulieve menu. So that's the opportunity. You've absolutely perfectly articulated it. I'm ready to buy. I'm a consumer on that website, Trulieve or Jars, whoever it is. I'm ready to buy. I'm in that, what Google calls the zero moment of truth. This is why Google search is the most dominant form of advertising, because that's another example of the zero moment of truth. I'm physically, actively searching for something at that moment. That's where every brand, every retailer wants to be. And this is the same deal. So you hit that Trulieve site, you're looking for pre-rolls or flour or whatever you're looking for, and you're hit with all of these options. Same as walking into the dispensary, you're hit with so many options. Now, in the dispensary, you might have a really helpful team in the dispensary to guide you. You don't have that on a website. So for brands to be able to hit someone with a really good looking piece of creative advertising that is directly attributed to that person's search, whether it's pre-roll, flower, vape, edible, whatever it is, we have seen, and I can give you some stats here on some of the brands and retailers doing this already today using Surfside Commerce Media. They're seeing massive upticks in all the stats that are important. Everything from brand awareness, so people just seeing that ad, being aware of that product's existence, through to people clicking on it and actually going through and making a purchase. So it's so important, just like you would do in-store merchandising, just like we go to Whole Foods or the grocery store and all these different brands are buying those end caps and they're buying displays and they're trying to get that consumer attention and awareness in the store, as is in cannabis as well. This is just the digital way of doing that. It's the digital example of getting that consumer. They're having giving yourself the best opportunity to capture that consumer's attention right in that moment when they are physically ready to make a purchase.
And just truly on that one, a particular one lists their vape pens, alphabetically. That's it.
Yeah.
And so I'm as a consumer, I'm look at all these vape pens, A through Z. There's a lot of them, and I'm getting my order ready. I don't even know who, and you look at, for example, Mint is another big retailer here. I'm looking to buy a vape pen at their place. Again, it's just B, B, C, C, D, D, D. There should be, whoever owns the website would end up making the money off of the advertisement. So why not make an additional revenue off? Is that part of the thing there?
It is. Well, a couple of things.
I don't mean to steal your thunder.
By the way, no, you're not stealing my thunder at all. I love that you've already got a great understanding of this. The first thing is all of those folks you've mentioned, in the next few weeks, when you hit those websites, you're going to see Surfside Commerce Media, because we're going live in Arizona in October. So it will be different in a few weeks. And most of those folks you mentioned are proudly customers of Surfside today. But what you've articulated there, Demitri, is spot on. And that's the other side of this equation. This is what I refer to as an ecosystem product. In that, we've talked about the brands and the advantages here for brands, that they're able to advertise at the point of purchase when the consumer is ready to buy and understand exactly where their money's going. The really cool thing on the retail side here is that we have now created a new revenue stream for retailers. So up until this point, the website and the e-commerce platform are cost centers. They are expenses to the business, and they cost money to run every single month. You've got to build the website, you've got to maintain the website, you've got to host the website, you've got to invest in your e-commerce provider. It's an expense to a business. What we're doing now is we actually do a revenue share with the retailer. So if this is, let's say it's a Jars retail website in Arizona, and they're selling the brands they're selling today are paying to advertise on the Jars website, we actually give a portion of that revenue from the brand, the money the brand is paying to advertise, over to Jars. So this turns the website into not a cost, it actually flips it on its head. It becomes a revenue stream, becomes a profit center for the retailer. And this is the huge thing. This is why when we talk to our retail customers and we call up the few folks that aren't retail customers today, and we tell them, this is a way we pay you money. We physically, Demitri, we send checks out now. Surfside sends checks out every single month to the retailers that are running this program on their website. So we've turned their websites, and their CFOs and their C-suites, of course, absolutely love this, because the marketing team have been able to say, we're going to turn this thing that cost us money into something that not only pays for itself, but generates revenue for our business. And the only thing they had to do was allow the brands and the products they already sell on that site to pay a little bit more money to be front and center and top of mind. And so, as I say, this is an ecosystem product, because the brands essentially fund it, and they want to fund it because, as we've talked about, they know where their money's going. If they're investing in this and they're not seeing a good return, they can just stop spending. They might stop spending in that state with that retailer on that particular website. That's up to them. But if they see a big return or a good return, they're going to keep investing. And then we're going to rev share, and we're going to give the retailer, because it's their website, we're going to pay them money every month, part of that. And that's why the ecosystem feeds itself. The brands invest and the retailers make money on the back end, not only from the advertising revenue, but obviously those products are going to sell faster, and they obviously make a cut of that. And the brand's happy because they're selling more at the retailer. So this is an ecosystem that's self-sustaining, which is very different than regular advertising, which is a little bit more, okay, I'll spend this money, I'm hopeful to get a return on my investment. This is almost a guaranteed situation.
Now, this is really good stuff. When are you going to be in Arizona again? We need to have a beer. I mean, this is...
We're there all the time. Myself and my team are there monthly, Kingsley and the team, but I'll definitely make sure I get down there before the end of the year.
Yeah, we need to have lunch or dinner. So this is the reason why I do Mita Unshackled, because obviously it's a giant ecosphere. There's so many different themes in the cannabis industry, things to learn about. But I feel as if I can learn a lot more from you. So I'm going to take advantage of the fact that we have a relationship, and I'm going to meet up with you, and hopefully others will as well. Are you going to go to Benzinga in Chicago next week?
Yeah, I'll be there next week. Yeah, I'll be there Wednesday, Thursday, heading out on Friday morning.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll definitely meet up, but I'll be there Tuesday through Thursday morning.
Awesome.
And then I'm going to don't tell anyone because I'm going to the opening of the Sphere on Friday night. U2's playing in Vegas.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
only slightly jealous. One of my favorite bands.
I got tickets. Yeah,
That's amazing.
It's a big deal for me. I'm very excited. Anyway, so that being aside, I want to, we try to keep these about 30 minutes, but one thing that's important that I kind of understand for you guys, and it's a big issue: new customers, new customer acquisition, bringing more people that know nothing about the existing dispensary and the existing customers to the retail outlet. Can you guys help with that as well?
Absolutely. This is where it comes back to that first party data. So we want to understand what are the traits and behaviors of these potential cannabis consumers. And then we go and we find them on the internet. We put ads in front of them wherever they might be. It could be CNN, could be ESPN. There's a wide range of websites now that allow cannabis advertising. It's sometimes state by state dependent. And we're just putting really good creative ads in front of these folks to encourage them to either make a visit to the dispensary or to make an online purchase and go in and pick up, or maybe even delivery. But new customer acquisition is probably the number one focus for our customers today, whether it's the biggest MSOs through to the smaller players. Yeah. And on the brand side too, I mean, we know how competitive the brands are in cannabis. Every celebrity seems to have one, and there's just such a proliferation of brands in the space that consumers just don't know. I mean, maybe they recognize Mike Tyson, but they're not going to recognize everybody. And so new customer acquisition and being able to prove out who a new customer is versus an existing customer versus a churned customer is a big part of what we do. And understanding, okay, we generated $100,000 a month in revenue this month through Surfside. How much of that is new business? 15,000 is new business. 10,000 is returning, and the rest of it is existing. Great. They want to understand that, because all of those elements play a role. You can't just only focus on new customers. You also got to keep your existing customers. And if you've got a customer that used to shop with you and they've gone down the road, how do you bring them back? So all of those three things play a role, but making sure there is a new customer acquisition focus. And frankly, a lot of what's going on right now, Demitri, is what we call conquesting, where dispensaries are actively going after consumers that have shopped at other dispensaries in the area. Right. And that's why we come back to your question earlier. Almost no one can get away with not being on the offense and defense here, because you've got to remember that your competitors are going after existing customers. So, it's like every industry, Adidas are going after Nike, and Nike are going after Adidas. They know that. They spend billions of dollars trying to maintain that market share and win new customers. Same thing in cannabis. No one can rest on their laurels. You need good technology, you need a good strategy, and you need to know where your money's going from a return on investment standpoint.
No, this is fantastic. And, I think we've got plenty. I don't want to get into the cost. We'll let you do that in person with the different individuals that contact you.
I'll share one data point, not on costs. I'll share one data point just on numbers, which I think is interesting. So we talked about the brands fund this, the retailers make revenue off it in two ways. We give them a cut of the advertising revenue. They also sell more product. We're seeing, and this is a fairly big ballpark, and it depends on how much traffic that website's seeing, but we're paying out between $1,000 and up to $10,000 per month per location to these retailers. So the bigger retailers with more traffic, they could be earning 5 figures up per month per location off this. The smaller folks are going to be a lesser number. But that's the important thing for the retail folks who are listening into this, who are, how do we drive more revenue? This is a brand new revenue stream. You take this to your CFO, your founder, the board, and tell them that you found a way to turn the website into something that's going to generate revenue for them. There's not too many folks that aren't going to be able to pursue that. So that's the interesting, I think, piece. And that's the number I would share with the audience.
I watch a lot of CNN, and I'm thinking to myself, this is sort of like the dispensary brand wars. You got Russia and Ukraine, and Surfside are like the drones that nobody expected. and are not being used. I'm just kidding.
I hope we're
Bad
not the
metaphor,
drones. I hope we're the diplomats and the peacemakers. That's what I hope we are.
Yeah. All right. Well, no, this has been fantastic, Anthony. We got to get together. We will get together in
I'll see you next
Chicago
week.
at Benzinga next week, and we'll chat. Maybe have a drink or some food.
Yes.
And but any closing thoughts? And then closing thoughts, and then how do people contact you directly?
Yeah, closing thoughts for any retailers. This is something that it sounds a bit silly sometimes when I say it. Literally costs you nothing. This is us generating revenue for you. So most of the folks that are understanding that are signing up in droves. And so we're excited to launch in Arizona next month. We're live in Massachusetts and Michigan, New Mexico, about to go live here in California. And for the brand marketers on the phone, on the line, the folks that are out there in these very competitive spaces trying to get their brand in whatever category it is to be front and center, top of mind with customers. This is the solution that's going to get you there. So I'd leave you with those thoughts. Surfside, we have a lot of conversations every day with folks that aren't necessarily ready all the time to go ahead with this. We're still more than happy to walk folks through this, explain it in detail, whether it's today, tomorrow, next week, next year. Maybe it's never the right time, but we play a big role in this industry. We find we want to be a helpful partner to companies in this space. So it's not always the right time, but we're still willing to take people through this and get them up to speed and educated so that if and when they are ready, they're in a position to make a decision. To contact me, really, really easy. My email address is just anthony@surfside.io. So it's anthony@surfside.io. I'm on LinkedIn if you want to find me there. Again, more than willing to chat with any folks on the phone. And again, we're down in Arizona. Someone from Surfside is in Arizona like every month. So happy to always get together in person as well and talk through the details.
Yeah, of course, you're nationwide as well and available to people. This has been fantastic, Anthony. I love podcasts when I learn something new. I'm always learning something new. I'm like a tabula rasa every morning. They should make a movie about that, like a man who wakes up knowing nothing every day. I don't know. Maybe it's just the way I live my life. But yeah, thank you. Fantastic to meet you, and we will see you soon. And I always said, if I ever get a job in this industry, I'm gonna work for Weed Maps, but I might end up working for Surfside. We'll see what happens one day.
We would welcome you with open arms. Demitri, thank you. Thanks, Eric, and the team as well. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Cheers.
This has been another episode of Meat Unshackled.